Good morning, and welcome to North Shore Unitarian Church. NSUC is a community grounded in love, guided by reason, committed to spiritual growth, and striving for justice. And we warmly welcome the CAUUC and the UUANI today for their conference on social justice. My name is Will Esty. I use he, they pronouns. I'm the intern minister here. Unfortunately, Reverend Lucas was unable to join us this week, but I am so glad to be with you this morning. Our community strives to celebrate every person who comes to our sanctuary. Whether you ran in here on little feet, tuned in virtually, or walked in briskly, or ambled in, or rolled in, you are welcome here. Whatever your complexion or orientation or gender expression or political beliefs even, you are welcome here. Unitarian Universalism is a pluralistic, open-minded faith that puts love at the center. And in case it is helpful to you, we have a loop hearing system on the lower level. And I would like to extend an additional special welcome to those of you tuning in online who could not be here in person today. It is so wonderful to join together for worship. The Unitarian Universalist flaming chalice is a symbol of our dedication, and I would like to read the words that we typically read on Sundays when we light it for worship. This flame affirms the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. May this flame continue to be a symbol of all of the work that we do. I now invite you to join in singing our first hymn today. We will do this a little bit a cappella, so it might be rough on the first verse, but by the time we get to verse 2 or 3, I promise you we will have it down, all right? We'll be doing number 346, Come Sing a Song With Me. I will make sure to shout out the verses as we get to them. If you feel the need for a hymnal, you're welcome to. If you think you can handle it, you're also welcome to wing it. I'll wait for folks to get back, and then I'll give us a starting pitch. $346. I think that's that's enough. There we go. I was tempted. I didn't. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring I would now like to invite our very own Sally up for our reading.
Good morning. This is adapted from the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson. These roses under my window make no reference to former roses or to better ones. They are for what they are. They exist with God today. There is no time to them. There is simply the rose. It is perfect in every moment of its existence. Before a leaf bud has burst, its whole life acts. In the full-blown flower, there is no more. In the leafless root, there is no less. Its nature is satisfied, and it satisfies nature in all moments alike. But we postpone or remember. We do not live in the present, but with reverted eye lament the past, or heedless of the riches that surround us, stand on tiptoe to foresee the future. We cannot be happy or strong until we too live with nature in the present, above time.
I would now invite you into a moment of quiet thought, meditation, or prayer. And as we settle into this moment on this early Saturday morning, I invite you to check in with your own body, with your own soul, and with your own mind. Note what additional care you need to take for yourself today. What additional care you may need to take for those around you as we gather to work and to learn and to grow. These words are no longer in Article 2, one of the defining bodies of our denomination, but they still hold resonance. We believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all people, which calls us to treat them with justice, equity, and compassion in our lives. We believe in spiritual growth and transformation through the use of a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We believe in the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process in our dealings with the goal of a beloved world community with truth, justice, and liberty for all. And we believe in the interdependent web of all of existence, of which we are a part. These words will always define our faith, whether we use them or not. Blessed be. I now turn to the words of Ruth Idakula and the Reverend Deanna Vandiver from their ritual for blessing the organizers, taken from Blessing It All, a recent book put out by the UUA filled with rituals like this. Beloveds, thank you for showing up for each other, for the beloved community that we are always in the process of creating. We bear witness to the courage and the power among us. In this sacred time, we ask everyone present to join in a ritual of blessing for all of us who organize for justice and collective liberation. Beloveds, you are invited to take a centering breath in and then, with intention, release it. As you breathe in and out, know that you are not alone. Know that the ancestors that fought before you are with you now. Know that you are forever guided by their wisdom and sustained by their love and courage. Take another breath. And as you are willing and able, reach out and connect with a human being near you, with a hand, an elbow, a wave, a gentle smile, some sort of acknowledgement of our connections. You are invited to be part of this blessing, offering your love and energy and support. You are invited to be part of this blessing, receiving love and energy and support from those around you. Breathing in and slowly releasing your breath, please repeat after me. I am worthy. We are worthy. My life matters. Our lives matter. I am not alone. We are not alone. I am held by a community of power and love. We are held by a community of power and love. One more time through all of those. I am worthy. We are worthy. My life matters. Our lives matter. I am not alone. We are not alone. I am held by a community of power and love. We are held by a community of power and love. Now, breathing in and then slowly releasing your breath again, please repeat after me, offering this blessing to each other. We are grateful for you. We need you. My beloveds, receive this blessing and go forth with courage and compassion to organize for justice and mercy. One more time, breathing in a breath of love and breathing out a breath of liberation. We say Aaseng and Amen. Please now join me in singing one of the defining hymns of our denomination, number 123, Spirit of Life. I will again give us a starting tone. Sweaty phone. to close with the words of Nancy Wood, treasured words in this congregation. Hold on to what is good, even when it is a handful of earth. Hold on to what you must do, even when it is a tree standing alone. And hold on to my hand, even when I am very far away from you. Peace, and may it be so. And with that, I'd like to invite Mike up to get us started on this most blessed of days.
Thank you, Will. That was very nice in-gathering service, and welcome to our conference this morning, to those that are here in person and to those on Zoom. And I know that for those on Zoom, if there's any that recently joined, they may not have received the agenda, so I want to pass that to them right now. And I'll share that with you all too. Okay, so of course, those of you who have the handout have the agenda. It's on the reverse page, and that outlines what we'll be talking about today. My name is Mike Gilley. I use pronouns he and him. I'm a member at Countryside Church. I'm also the president of the Chicago Area Unitarian Universalist Council, and I'm joined by our other council members here today that are in the hallway and in the audience here, I think. We're distributed around a little bit. We'll have introductions and thanks to them and to all of the helpers here at North Shore that have stepped up to help make this conference a reality. Anybody who's ever been involved with trying to orchestrate a meeting for groups of people coming from disparate places involving dietary issues, food, beverage, different needs and interests, people deciding whether they will be in person or maybe they will be by Zoom, can appreciate that it is like herding cats. So today we are at the welcome, and we're going to actually, unlike many of our other conferences where we've traditionally had a keynote speaker that set a tone and maybe had the crucial message that we were looking to build on and to communicate, to talk about among ourselves. This is a different moment. And admittedly, the keynote speaker that I had identified became unavailable at the last minute. So that didn't work out. However, a new idea emerged. And in talking with Reverend Scott Aaseng, there was a resonance with work that is going on within UUANI and work in direction within CAUUC that was in beautiful alignment. So the opportunity presented itself for our congregations, our member congregations that are part of this Chicago area collection, if you will, to gather together and to be sharing how it is that each of them is meeting this moment, this very interesting moment in time when we have not just the opportunity to live into our Unitarian Universalist values, but I think a responsibility to. And so the conference is designed with this in mind, for there to be sharing, and what we are going to do is invite our panelists to speak at first one at a time. We'll invite each of them to come to the rock, which is quite an incredible and interesting story unto itself. But we'll have presentations that are done, and so I have a sequence here that I thought might make some sense, and that begins with Janell speaking Janell Cleland from North Shore, who will speak about their Democracy Action Team. And we'll follow that up with Carolyn Laughlin from Unitarian Church of Evanston, speaking about their Catalyst initiative. And then Karen Peck from DuPage, who has the technical team who's supporting the work and the mechanisms that are in place that allow them to communicate to their congregation. She'll be talking about justice in action. And Reverend Mandy, unfortunately, is on the agenda. She was ill yesterday, and I take it that she was unable to join us. So unfortunately, her part is a very important element of anybody who's involved with doing any kind of work, but justice work in particular, self-care. And Reverend Mandy has some nice reflections. I hope that we'll have her at another time, maybe record something that could be shared out to the attendees here to get the content that I started to receive just from the conversation I was having with her ahead of the conference. Then we'll bring Reverend Scott Aaseng on board to talk about, through a set of moderated questions, about the direction of UUANI. And only if time's permitting, I'll come in at the end with a presentation having to do with some of the challenges that Countryside Church faced when our social justice leaders decided that they were ready to let the next generation, start leading, and there weren't a lot of hands that were going up, okay, as in no hands went up. So we'll talk, what do you do in that situation? So I'd like to invite Janell for you to come on up, and if that would be right.
So there's three of us.
Oh, you're gonna, all three of you gonna come up? Oh, whoever's gonna, what would be best for you for speaking? The rock?
Available for you. Yeah. So we want to be respectful of time. What are you thinking? We're going to chat.
So about 10 to 12 minutes of highlighting what you're having, then we'll have some questions.
We'll do it fast. All right, we'll do. Hi, I'm Janell Cleland. Just briefly, I will share with you how we moved into becoming a democracy action team. It appeared to us that whenever we gathered in church or without church, the question was always, what's next post-election? Everybody was worried about what's next, what's next. And as luck would have it, some of us attended the monthly UUSJ conference, and they were addressing that directly in that particular meeting, and it was in November, just right at early December, right after the election. And they shared with us their purpose statement. They wanted to build a pro-democracy movement nationwide to use collective power wherever possible in local communities and at the state level and at the federal level. So, and they were asking congregations from coast to coast to create democracy action teams to be ready to take action when called upon. So post that meeting, I called Reverend Lucas and I said, what do you think? Is this something we should present to our congregation? And he said, absolutely. And so literally a week after UUSJ, in the newsletter and in the order of service and on Facebook, we posted that we wanted people to come together and discuss the possibility of forming a democracy action team. And Holly's going to talk to you briefly about, during that meeting, kind of what we decided as it relates to our existing teams.
Prior to that Prior to that, we have both a social justice and a racial justice team, and we felt that what was most important was us to basically not try to compartmentalize too much, but to bring everybody together. So we decided to have a racial justice, a democracy action team, and we also, at that point in time, decided on the three areas that we wanted to focus on. One was immigration. One was one was immigration. I was going to say, it's been a long day. LGBTQ, and then environmental justice. And so that was how we started forming. And I ended up being head of the immigration team. We already had a green team, and they basically sort of melded that work into what they were already doing, and we then also created our LGBTQ team. Then the other thing that we also created was something called a rapid response team. And this was really set up for if something comes up immediately where there needs to be some kind of action, that would be sent to our rapid response team organizers, and they would decide, yes, we're going to respond, no, we're not going to respond. And this would have to do with if there was a rally, often also getting into a little bit of if there's a legislative issue. But we have a way in which we can easily mobilize people if something comes up.
I think one of the biggest decisions we made is that we decided the entire congregation was the Democracy Action Team. And we also decided that you had to opt out of that team, not opt in. And that meant that this first message that you are now part of a Democracy Action Team went to 800 people, and they had to opt out. And if Lucas is here, maybe Lydia knows, it was a small number of people who actually opted. Yeah. Of the 800. Now we know some of them are long gone and probably don't open our emails, but that was a number that initially scared me a little bit, like, what, 800 people messages from us? But that's the way we chose to do it, and that's how we still send out our rapid response. We also took, Holly mentioned the teams, we took very seriously some advice from UUSJ that says you don't need to create this work. You need to gather, you need to support what's established in your local community. And they also warned us not to create a laundry list. Don't list all the things you need to save and work on. You need to decide, and the questions were, where can you make the largest impact? And where do we already have the deepest connections? And that's how we ended up with the three teams that Holly mentioned. The advice was to go narrow and to go deep. And even though we gave up some things that are dear to our hearts, we had to trust that other Unitarian congregations would select that as their narrow and deep. And so we went with just the three. And is that partners? So let us share the narrow and deep for you. We decided that the existing partnership was the Highwood Library and Community Center. And I happen to be on the board of trustees at that library. And we also have an existing partnership. We have worked with them prior on establishing an essentials pantry. We ran a knitting group for them. So we already knew the personnel at that library. And the other, let me wait till later on that. We also connected with the Center for Immigrant Progress in Waukegan, and they gave us good advice about some of the work that we were going to do. And then the Green Team asked their members to monitor, I think Vicki told us 14 different organizations, monitoring them for action, monitoring them for legislative work that they were following, advocacy that they were following.
I just want to mention one reason why we chose the Highwood Library. Highwood is a very small community that sits right above Highland Park, and it's always been an immigrant community, and a large percentage of their population already is Hispanic. So that, our connections with the library go back, at least in terms of some of the people, like 30, 35 years. So it's a very strong relationship. And I think without that relationship and the other connections that came out with it, it wouldn't make sense for us to be that's why we chose immigration. It was because we had a population both close and also large communities in Lake County are, for example, Waukegan is now more than 50% Hispanic. So it made a lot of sense to be able to do that. So what did we do? Well, the main thing that was most visible is if you have done anything with immigration recently, there are these what are called these little red Know Your Rights cards, which basically give an individual, ours are written in one side Spanish, one side English, and it gives someone very quickly a list of theoretically what are their rights, which are, number one, you don't have to open your door, you don't have to talk to anyone, et cetera. And if something happens, you need to see if you can have someone come in and at least have some record of it in terms of, if only using your phones. So that was really, I wanted to say about that. We've already given out more than 12,000 cards. I mean, I think we've been pretty amazed. And my team, who are really doing all this, have been very creative as to where you go. I mean, they're going to grocery stores, mostly Hispanic grocery stores. They're going to barber shops. They're going to, we've hit all of the larger organizations, all the organizations that provide any kind of mental health services or health services. So, and we've probably, I think we've hit, more stores than I can imagine. And we basically we don't want to leave cards. We basically are saying, we talk to someone and we say, would your organization like some of these cards? And I'm amazed. We've talked to our food pantries. One of our food pantries has already taken 200 cards. So, I think it's been quite amazing. And the other thing that we have done is, this is not so much for the Hispanic, but this would be more the LGBTQ. We have been involved with some of the rallies that have been pro-transgender. I think there was transgender awareness. I think that was pretty much across the country. And we've been to the Hands Off rallies, May Day rallies. So those are the most important things that we've done. And we are constantly looking to this one organization in Waukegan that Janell mentioned to give us other ideas as to how we can be involved.
So an extension of the Highwood Library partnership, the Highwood Library has a health equity program, one of the only libraries maybe in the state of Illinois. And we have licensed psychologists, social workers that are all bilingual, and they have a caseload of Highwood residents. And they were able to identify 20 families, the case managers were able to identify 20 families who were really afraid to leave their homes, who also didn't have transportation, and who were also financially, they were also needing financial assistance. And so we created a shopping network, and we shop for those 20 families once a month. The coordinator at the Highwood Library met with them, pulled up the Woodman's website, and the clients themselves shop, so they get to order. That was one of the biggest things. A lady turned to the social worker, her name is Vidi, and she said, I can order yogurt? And she said, yes, you can order whatever you need. And she said, I've wanted yogurt for 6 months. And so she calls the order in to Woodman's, and our volunteers show up at Woodman's and pick up the groceries, and they have the address of the families, and they deliver the groceries to the family once a month. So we serve those 20 families, and we have a funder at the library who's paying for those groceries. Just maybe two quick stories about that. One of our families, I don't know if some of you saw in the news, ICE did come to Highwood, and they detained a young father of 4 with a brand new baby. And they're one of our families. And so now we didn't know that at the time, but we are delivering groceries to the wife and the 4 children once a month. And Marcia's family, Marcia's with us. She had breast cancer surgery yesterday, a single mom by herself. And we actually, at the end, when she couldn't afford the surgery, were able to join a community GoFundMe so that she could have the surgery yesterday. So we are slowly getting the stories of our families and sharing them with the people who are delivering. So that's really, I think, one of the most powerful partnerships that we're involved in right now. One more thing I'll tell you that's just by luck has been so meaningful. We gathered and created cards to include in the grocery orders, and they're written in Spanish. They're written in English and Spanish, and you choose the message that means the most to you. And they're adorable. They're all crafty and colorful, and they're tucked in the groceries. And the family whose husband was deported, she got an order like a week later, and literally by luck, the card said, "We support immigrants and you belong in our community." And she called the library to say that it was such a moment for her to know that somebody in this community believed that they belonged there. That is, let's go to you.
Yeah, I haven't said anything. Couple of the other, we have a legislative action team that also, we meet weekly and we look at Illinois legislation that we want to let our community know about and have them show up through, similar to what UUANI does, either through witness slips or calling your legislator, going to meet with your legislators. And so we wanted to do this also. Part of that is taken to the federal level through the Democracy Action Team. So if there is a federal bill or something that we know we want to contact our legislators about, that alert goes out through our Legislative Action Team. So we have done several alerts I think the SAVE Act was one of them. We realized that not much is going to come of it, but we want our legislators to know that we support them, or we want to push them along a little bit. To that end, Brad Schneider is the representative for some of us in this area. And so we've been trying to he was doing phone call town halls for a while, and we really felt that we needed to meet with this man in person and, try to light a little fire under him a little bit. So it's not because of our doing that he did eventually have a in-person town hall, but several of our members were able to attend that. And just continuing to make connections with the legislators is another part of our democracy action in what we want to be able to do. Being able to have a response network that is able to act quickly is really important. All of it, we just got, there was a issue, so to speak, around a trans girl at Deerfield High School. And we knew the school board was going to be having their school board meeting, and so our congregation mobilized and showed up. We had heard that there were going to be a group of moms for liberty. And so we were there with flags and with our Reverend Lucas, who was able to speak, and Marcia, I think you were there as well. So being able to move quickly to respond to issues as they happen. Another example of that was Lake Zurich High School theater group did a production of The Prom, which is about 2 lesbian girls who want to go to the prom, and it's based on a true story. There was a movie with Meryl Streep, but their ticket sales were not not very good because people were not liking the subject matter. And so we, again, got members to go and buy tickets, and we did an outing. We went to the prom. We wanted to support this group and their kids. So legislative action doesn't always, sometimes it involves going to a play. It was kind of nice. Some of us also went to the rapid response training through, it was offered in Waukegan, right? The Center for Immigrant Progress. And ICER did the training, but there were 6 of us there that went to do that training so that if I were to show up someplace, we know what to do. We were able to be notified and show up to be able to film or not prompt, but, be aware of the rights that are needed then. So it's been really, do you have a closing statement?
I have a closing fun activity. We had our first protest poster party, and we all brought an appetizer and all the poster board and the laths and the markers and the staple guns, and we now have a protest poster library. You can check out your protest posters, and they're all made for you. And then you check them back in and you're ready for the next protest. And so the first day we opened the protest library, 8 people showed up to check out signs before they went to the May Day rally. So I'm sure we'll keep making posters and checking them out. So that one we had a great time.
Thank you. Don't sit down yet. Don't leave yet, rather. Are there questions that anybody would like to ask now of the panelists? You, ma'am? Hold on.
I wondered what you had to give up to narrow
Speak so that other people can.
I wondered what did you have to give up to narrow your focus?
Pro-choice. That was the hardest one, I think, wouldn't you say?
What else? Well, I think it's just sort of in general women's rights. And I think just some of the day-to-day stuff that sort of comes up, but that's probably the biggest one.
Other questions?
What'd you say?
Anybody else?
Income inequality, that came up. Mm-hmm.
Any more questions now? There'll be maybe room at the end of the second session to ask more questions, and certainly during our networking lunch as well, but
Sure.
Any last questions? Okay, thank you. Carolyn, I'll help get you set up on.
So much for that. Thank you. So again, just in case nobody heard or it didn't get picked up online, I just wanted to say how impressed I am with what's going on at North Shore. Your productivity and your creativity, just kind of breathtaking. I also noticed that some of what invigorated your team, your Democracy Action team, to do all the work that you're doing were some of the same underpinnings of what took place at UCE. So instead of talking about our partnerships, which you gave such great examples of, or specific projects that we're undertaking, again, you gave us wonderful examples. I'm going to be focusing here on the approach that we took and why we went in the direction that we did, which I think was slightly different than what happened at North Shore. So it just gives us another example of how an organization can get this underway. So how are we meeting the moment? Like many of the congregations represented here, we have what we call a social justice council. And underneath the umbrella of the council are a variety of different teams. Some of the teams are represented on this slide. So we have a legislative action team, just like what Sally was talking about, that responds to or sends out legislative alerts and also meets with congressional reps. We also have a local response network, which I think you folks called your rapid response network or action team. And we do very similar things. As rallies or protests become visible to our organization, the local response network is activated. We have about 100 people in the network, and they have the opportunity to attend these events, show up. Could be a school board meeting. Anything where your body is important, not just writing a witness slip, but actually showing up. These are what the local response network addresses. Then we have Green Team, environmental issues, prison ministry, and our immigrant solidarity team. And the topics that they would address are pretty self-evident by the titles of those teams. Now, this isn't the extent of our social justice network or council. We have other teams, but we selected these to focus on for a particular reason, which I'm going to get to right now. Before the election last fall, we had these teams operating underneath the heading of the council, but they weren't really talking to each other. We would have maybe every other month meetings of the council. People would report out on what their team was doing, but they weren't really functioning as a unit at all. Very isolated, silos. Then in the post-election moment, what we noticed in the congregation was several things. First of all, people were feeling despondent. No surprise in this crowd. So people were really flattened, pretty crushed by the outcomes. They were also feeling overwhelmed by the needs, overwhelmed by the urgency of so many of the marginalized populations in this country who were suddenly feeling really threatened for very good reason. And as a result, many of our congregants ended up feeling paralyzed. There was so much need, and they were in such despair that instead of taking action, people were kind of frozen. So we thought, well, what are we going to do about this? Scott was terrific at helping us to understand what Democracy in Action was and helped us to sort of catalyze our team. So we created this little team called Catalyst, and it was really just 5 or 6 people who were intended to enable more UCE members to lean into their UU values and make a difference in the public square. So that's kind of what Catalyst was supposed to be charged with doing. Catalyst immediately started every Sunday morning at the back of the sanctuary, laying out another 1 million opportunities for people to avail themselves of. So instead of galvanizing people, we kind of contributed to additional paralysis because we were giving people an abundant variety of things that they could do, and people would look at our table and say, oh my gosh, and either take a piece of paper and maybe bring it home or leave everything on the table as is. So we realized that that work of Catalyst wasn't really catalyzing anyone. So we took a different approach. We decided that we really needed to help people, our congregants, become focused and take action. So the first thing we did in Catalyst was we narrowed the field of UCE engagement areas, which is what I heard North Shore doing as well. You can't do everything, you can't address every issue. So what we asked ourselves is, what of our social justice teams have the capacity, have the ability to generate more action in the public policy area? And that's how we decided on our Green Team, Immigrant Solidarity, and Prison Ministry. Those were the teams that were the most robust, that were already activating their members to do legislative action. Yes? Oh, I'm so sorry. The Unitarian Church of Evanston. I'm so sorry. That's our lingo, as if everybody in the world would know what UCE meant. Thank you so much for asking. After the team narrowed the field, then we decided that we needed to confirm, really make sure that public policy advocacy was embedded or included in every team's mission. Because if they weren't interested in legislative action or public policy, the Catalyst team wasn't going to make them do anything different. So they had to have in their charter or in their mission statement the fact that whether they were doing it or not, public policy and legislative action was important to them. So we confirmed that. Then we began to use a new tool, the Catalyst intake form, to help our congregants identify how they wanted to work, what they wanted to work on. And I really feel like it's this Catalyst intake form that is kind of the differentiating characteristic of our approach. In our Catalyst intake form, real simple, one page, we just ask people a couple of questions. First, are you interested in working on the federal level? A lot of our congregants were. They were just feeling deluged by Washington, D.C., and they said, I want to fight that. So I want to go to rallies and protests and town halls, and I just want to, really shout back to Washington, D.C., federal level stuff, that we don't like what's going on. So we said, okay, we'll have work for you to do. We also asked, are you interested in doing state work, state level work? Because even though we're blue, we have a whole bunch of issues that everybody in this room knows about, whether it has to do with our prison system or our environmental justice. There's a lot that needs to be fixed in Illinois. So we said, do you want to work on the federal national stuff, or do you want to work on the state stuff? Or do you want to do both? But we ask people to choose a lane or tell us that they want to do both. Then we ask them which issue areas are of most interest to you: criminal justice, incarceration, environmental justice, or immigrant rights. They could choose all three, but what we're trying to do is ask people, what lane do you want to run in? And what lane do you want to choose for yourself and run hard? We were giving them an opportunity to narrow their field of vision and feel like they could really make a difference. So people are filling out these intake forms. And again, so where did they land? If they were interested in the federal, national level stuff, we would give their names to the local response network. The local response network was very aware of events going on in downtown Evanston, in Chicago, May Day, etc. And if you ended up in the local response network, because you said you wanted to respond to what's going on the national level, you would be contacted regularly about opportunities to do that work. If you said state, we were going to put you over with our legislative action team, because the legislative action team would be the ones who work on the state level in conjunction with UUANI and other partners to contact our elected reps and communicate with them about the issues that have to do with, again, green team, immigrants, and the prisons. Around the issues, if you indicated that you cared about environmental issues, we sent your name over to the green team. Incarceration, we sent your name over to the prison ministry team. Immigrant rights, obviously, refugee stuff, immigrant solidarity team. So now, all these teams have these names coming to them. But you can imagine what our next work was, right? Now we've got congregants who are indicating what they want to do, and we're feeding their names and their contact information to these teams. But those names could have just died at those teams. We had to visit with the teams and make sure that they felt comfortable intercepting, welcoming, including, and activating new members. So, narrow the field of vision, confirm everybody wants to do public advocacy, create this new tool. This was the real big deal here, gaining agreement on the new process to establish communication between the social justice teams. Because I mentioned earlier, previously, they had been working in silos. Legislative action was sort of talking to the three subject area teams, but not regularly. There wasn't good communication there. The local response network was doing its thing, but not necessarily connected very well to the three social justice teams. So take a look at this next slide. It looks a little messy, but it represents some pretty good stuff. What we got going was better communication between the local response network and the three subject matter teams. And the legislative action team is now communicating more effectively with prison, immigrant, and green team. So the communication is not one way, it's two way. We have the subject matter teams talking to those teams that activate our members and send them out to do good work. We also ended up with this situation where the social justice teams are now talking to each other. They're realizing that we've got this intersectionality. Populations in prison may also have immigrant issues, or environmental justice could have to do with immigrant solidarity. So the teams are now talking to each other. We've really transformed the way the Social Justice Council works and what goes on at those meetings. So that's pretty exciting for us too. What's the bottom line here? We have not accomplished all this. We've seen some progress and we're hoping to see more. Augmented focus on public policy action by the social justice subject matter teams, increased membership on all the social justice teams because we're feeding them new people, increased participation in public policy initiatives, rallies, demonstrations, and meetings with the elected officials, and enhanced ability to meet the needs of visitors, and I'm sure you're getting these people who walk through the door and say, I'm looking for kindred spirits who are doing social justice work. We used to say, oh, great, we're so glad you're here, but we didn't really do what we needed to with those newcomers to help them understand that they are in the right place and we can help them get engaged. So now we can really give visitors something more to chew on and get hooked into, which is, quite frankly, having a really terrific impact on the growth of our membership. So we're excited about that too. That pretty much wraps it up for me, unless you've got questions or thoughts or comments about what I've shared.
One question that I would have for you is about that intake form that you're using with the congregation. What percentage of your members actually have completed that?
Oh, gosh, really good question. Well, you folks may struggle with this the way we do. We would love our intake form to be announced at every Sunday morning and in every newsletter and big posters around the sanctuary. There's a lot going on in our church. So as a result, we don't quite have the airtime that we would like to be able to let everybody know on a regular basis that this is available to them. So it's a little bit of an uphill battle. We probably have about, I would say, about 25 people at this point, new folks who never before worked on those social justice teams or were engaged in the local response network or legislative action. Probably have about 25 new people. But we have a table at the back of the sanctuary every Sunday, and we're talking this up to the degree that we possibly can. So it's still relatively new, but I think people are catching on.
And if anybody has a question, please raise your hand so I can come over by you. A question that, another question I had was about that form of communications that you're now using that is improved.
Yes.
Where you drew the graph. What are those in-person meeting communications? Is this electronic communications? What are the forms of communications you're talking about?
Are you asking, Mike, about communication among the teams? Yeah. It probably varies. What's the base of that, what's at the root of that is we didn't just send out a communication, a piece, and say, hey, the world has changed and these are the things that you need to do. We actually sat down. For example, I was responsible for prison ministry. So I went and I sat down with the leaders of prison ministry and I asked them, to what extent are you interested in doing legislative advocacy? And they said, well, it's in our charter. We'd love to do it, but we've never done it before. And I asked them a little bit about what's your relationship with LAT? How much do you guys talk to each other? What would be helpful to you? To inspire your members to get more active. And just by having those conversations with prison ministry and LAT, they started to realize that by communicating more frequently, prison ministry could share opportunities with LAT, and LAT could help the prison ministry folks get organized to go talk to elected reps. So the form of the communication varies: emails, texts, phone calls, but it was getting them to realize that talking to each other would really be very beneficial for both teams. That was what inspired the change and the increased communication.
I think that was my question as well, is you showed the one graphic of the 3 different areas communicating together. Do you still have your Social Justice Council? Is that another place where all that communication happens?
Yes, what's really helpful is our Associate Minister, Reverend Susan Francis, is totally on top of what's going on with Catalyst and what we're doing. She oversees the Social Justice Council, so she has again transformed the way that council meeting runs. And instead of people just in a very boring way giving status reports, she's provoking them to think about and convey to each other what they're doing that relates to each other's teams. So she's got a whole different way of facilitating those meetings to prompt the discussion that needs to happen and ends up in more work. Thank you.
Irene.
Thank you. I have, I think, 2 questions. I'm a little unsure or questioning why local response network is under federal. And then that's on the 8th slide. And then on the 10th slide, I see that local response network has arrows to Green Team Immigrant Solidarity and Prison Ministry, and the Legislative Action Team does, but there's no communication between local response network and Legislative Action Team. And so I was wondering if you could clarify those.
All right.
things.
Let me take a shot at that. The local response network deals with a lot of local issues. So that's where it probably is confusing because I have it under federal. We needed to figure out what to do with people who say, state is, yeah, ho-hum. What I care about is what our administration is doing in DC. So we knew that there was a ton of energy there, and we needed to address the needs of those people. So we give those people to the local response network, not because LRN is only dealing with federal or national stuff. In fact, they're dealing with mostly things that are going on in Chicago and Evanston. But they also have expanded their purview so they're more attentive and aware of rallies, protests, bring down, pushback opportunities, so that those people who said, I just want to fight DC, go over to the local response network and they get fed opportunities to go to those rallies, protests, demonstrations, town halls with elected officials. So that's why I put LRN under national or federal, because that's where we send those people. We also tell them about UUSJ, which, you know, they can hook up to, they can click that link, UUSJ, Unitarian Universalist for Social Justice, which is, you know, a bigger organization across the country, and they can find opportunities there too. For example, June 14th, if they want to go to Washington, DC, they can do that. Yeah, so that's why the LRN it goes with the federal and national people who are interested in that stuff. The reason we don't have LRN and LAT aligned between those, or a communication connection between those two, is because they largely act separately. They don't really talk to each other too much formally, except when they come to the Social Justice Council meetings, they might share information, but they're dealing with different populations. The LAT people don't touch national federal stuff, not in our congregation. They don't do that, not yet. They may at some point, but they don't now. So that's why they're not talking to the local response network too much. How did that work? Tell me if it didn't work.
Well, I'm thinking, thank you for the clarification. So far, I'm thinking I don't like the way that works, but that's just me.
I would love to hear your thought, if we're allowed to do that.
Maybe over lunch.
Okay.
Or in the breakout.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your feedback. Hey, we're still trying to bake this thing, so yeah, if you've got tips or advice, I'm definitely open.
I was just wondering about your intake form. Is it paper only or is it electronic? Do you
It's
Do you
electronic.
So do you send it out to the whole congregation?
Well, we've got a QR code, we've got a link in our newsletter every week. You know, whenever we get our piece into the newsletter, there's a link. Yes, it's electronic. We also have hard copies at the back of the sanctuary every Sunday if people want to do it that way.
I printed it out, it's in your handouts.
Right.
And we could easily, with your permission, share,
Oh,
you know,
for sure.
the Google form, no big deal.
Yeah.
The intake form where Carolyn was describing
That's there.
different inputs, different interest areas that you might have.
Mike, if it's okay, I'd like to ask myself a question. So a question that I would ask myself would be, what kind of challenges have we run into? Because certainly we have, you know, this is not perfect and we don't have it done yet. Our biggest challenge is the bleeding out. Even trying to narrow the field to these 3 justice teams was tough. There was a lot of pushback. There was a lot of, and now that we are supposedly set on just operating in these 3 lanes, we still have Catalyst members and others who are bleeding out and saying, but, you know, let's throw this at people and let's let them know about this because it's really important. And it is. But we're really trying to, you know, maintain that focus to enable things to be less confusing and less overwhelming for our congregants.
You had a question?
Did you say the catalyst form is in here?
Yes.
It is.
Regarding my action or response plan, and then the next couple of pages after that as well.
Thank you. You mentioned that you had a better way of engaging members, visitors, I meant. And I just wondered, is it through the same form, or do you do something more deliberate with visitors?
I love that question because I happen to be responsible for hospitality. So we used to, you know, greet people at the front door and hope that they found a seat, and we invited them for coffee afterwards. And of course, you know, I don't know about you folks, but when I go into a congregation or a space of 250 people and I'm invited to stay for coffee and I don't know anybody, I head for the parking lot and go right home. So we knew that we weren't doing what we needed to do with visitors and guests. So we really beefed up the front, I call it the front end. I also work as a saint usher. I don't know if you folks are familiar with performing arts, and there's a team of volunteer saint ushers. So I'm really into, like, what do you do with people when they walk in the door? So now we have 4 different stations where we intercept people. We've got the welcome center, and then we've got the sanctuary door greeter, and then we have another lead usher who floats for people who look a little lost or confused or come in late, and that person shows people, walks them to a seat, maybe asks a current member to move over, stop saving your seat, and let this visitor sit next to you. And also we have a sanctuary table, a little tiny table at the back of the sanctuary where we have information. So instead of having to go to coffee hour and feel scared of like walking into a group of strangers, you can just, if you're new, come to our little table with one person and have a little interaction. That person's going to get you coffee and introduce you to some more folks. The other thing we do that I'm very proud of is immediately after a visitor, an individual visitor guest has come, we have a team of people who pick up the phone and call that individual in the next week or 2 and simply say, thank you so much for coming and taking a look at UCE, Unitarian Church of Evanston. What was your experience like? What are you looking for? Because we'd like to help you navigate to whatever it is you're most interested in. People love these calls, and we get a ton of really good information about what people are experiencing and what they're looking for at UCE. So it's really good data. But again, people are just blown away by the fact that we're making those personal calls. We do it 90 days later as well, because we know that, you know, first call might not work, might have to leave a voicemail. We stay on it until people tell us to stop. But really, nobody's ever told us stop calling. They really feel touched by the fact that we say every person who comes through our doors is valued and appreciated. So thank you so much for that question. Yes. Well, It's shocking to me, Sally, that people answer phones from numbers that they don't know. You would be surprised, because I don't. You would be surprised how many people do that. And when they don't pick up, we leave a comprehensive, it's about a minute and 15, a minute and 20-second voicemail, completing it by saying, if you'd like to have a conversation, please call our associate minister, Reverend Susan Francis. Here's her telephone number. She loves having conversations with folks like you, and she'd love to help you find your way. So sometimes we get called back. I'm like, who's this from? You know, because I make maybe 15 calls in a day. But yeah, no, it works really well.
Any last questions? Well, thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you so much.
Karen Peck from DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church is next, and I'll help with your presentation up here. What? Oh, you can.
We're just getting tech set up here. I'm Karen Peck. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm from the DuPage UU Church in Naperville. Thank you, Mike, for inviting DuPage UU to join this group. It's fascinating to hear how other churches are doing things. Okay, what we decided was to start something called Justice in Action, and I'll give you a little background on that. So a brief history of social justice at our church. We have had a rotation of ministers on and off through the last 20 years. So our social justice program has kind of ebbed and flowed, and it caused a lot of disruption in social justice. Some of our ministers attended the Naperville Faith Alliances for leaders. Some had relationships with other organizations. With our new settled minister, Reverend Mandy Husenga, she is starting to make connections in the community, and we are looking for a more structured social justice program in the near future. Now, I've heard other people say exactly what I'm about to say. We did question, should we try to have a centralized social justice group? And we did try that with our last settled minister. The congregation had a huge congregation-wide meeting and voting, and we settled on racial justice as a focus. And we wanted the full congregation involved. The challenge was to have the full congregation working on one sustained action. And the reality, and I've heard this in this room already, it was just a few interested people who wound up working on it at a very deep level. So it was a sustained program, actually very successful, but it did not involve the full congregation. So what wound up happening was we actually do, if you take a step back and look at the full congregation, we do a lot of social action, but it is siloed, and these are some of the groups that do social justice work in individual categories, probably familiar to all of you: environmental, statements of conscience, LGBTQ issues, PADS, which is for homeless shelter in our area. SMILE was that deep and narrow program that addressed racial justice, and it did become a breakthrough congregation award winner in 2019. We have a group called Do-Gooders, and they do one-off community work. And then UU The Vote is now an official part of our congregation. And the woman in charge of that has been very successful in pulling other people in. But what we wanted to do, first we had to decide, well, when are we going to do this? And our priority number one under our new settled minister was to develop a policy governance model. We're just at that sweet spot where we're a pastoral church trying to become a program church. And that was the number one goal for the first year and a half. And now we're starting to think about what to do about social justice. And we even questioned, do we need a centralized social justice team? And the big challenge is, how do you get everybody involved? And I'm really impressed to hear how you have done this. Our longer term goal is also to get connected with other UU churches and other organizations, and that's why we're here. And again, this repeats some of what you said. The 24 election happened, and there was an incredible urgency to do something. And our minister was just inundated with fear, anxiety, and demands and questions. So what we did is come up with something to address immediately the dangers to our members, specifically any not undocumented members and LGBT community members, especially transgender members, and other marginalized groups. So, I don't know what I just did, Mike. Oh, okay. We founded in February 25, we founded the Justice in Action Initiative. And when I did this PowerPoint, I didn't realize we were only 3 months old. So we aspire to Evanston and others, but here's where we're at today. Our thought was, gosh, it's really hard to get people to do stuff and to get people to talk to each other. But people will do easy, low time, no money, one-off, tasks. And we wanted to make sure those tasks or those actions were relevant to our UU values. We also did not want to recreate the wheel, so we only use at this time existing resources. Okay. Actions might include scripts, links, dates, locations, time commitments, so people know what they're getting into. And we provide everything to them. A script, a text, contact links. We make it as easy as you possibly can get it. For attending things, we also list boycotts, protests, rallies, marches, locations, how you sign up, how long it'll be. We've offered educational, virtual, and live sessions for people to attend for those who aren't ready to actually step in and do something, but want to start to learn. And we occasionally throw in some good news, because we all need that, and some self-care, because this is hard work. It is hard work, and we have to sustain ourselves. Participants sign up to do this. Rather than them sending us an intake, we send them an intake. They sign up to get on an email list with our tech folks in the back. They receive an email each week that outlines 5 to 7 actions. Those actions are linked. You'll see what it looks like in a minute. And they're free to do as much or as little as possible. A lot of folks at church want to do something, but have never done this kind of work. And this is a way to step into it safely and with a lot of guidance. So we figured we need 3 teams to create and implement this program. So we have a vetting team, and I'm on that team. We're the scouts. There's 2 of us right now. We look for actions, we compile those actions, and we make sure it aligns with our values. Once we fill out those intake forms, it goes to an editing team who double checks us and cleans the language up, makes the forms consistent. And then technology. And again, I'll go deeper into this. Vetting, again, using existing resources. We have to make sure it's nonpartisan. We are nonpartisan. We don't mention parties, but as you are all aware, a lot of the actions are based on particular parties or administrative initiatives. We keep our eyes and ears open. We listen to what members have to suggest. And we created guidelines for what vetting is. And I'm sure those are going to change as we continue to explore this process. We also have to understand what an action is and what it isn't. Sometimes people say, oh, here's a great petition to do. Well, that petition really isn't leading to an action. It's just asking for money or data gathering. So it's good for vetting people to be aware of that. We also vet the organizations from which suggestions may come, because sometimes those are biased or have their own agenda, which may not work for our church. And we're mindfulness about language. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Recently, with the addition of a second vetting person, he said, do we really need 11 actions? So we decided we're going to try it with 5 to 7, see what happens. And we do have to narrow down actions. We're going to have to figure out how to prioritize. Again, we're only 3 months into this, and it was very helpful to hear how you've done that. We'll have to discuss parameters, and we will also have to recognize we won't always have a perfect mix. We aim for, at this point, local, state, and federal. We aim for different varieties of personalities. I only want to do phone calls. I only want to do emails. I only want to protest, or I'll do anything, or can I just sit and listen and learn for now? So we're trying to cover that, and whenever possible, bring in kids. So we want intergenerational programs. We want to raise the next generation of social justice folks. Editing, editors check and vet the actions. They look for clarity and make sure it's easy to understand. If they don't understand it, neither will the members. So they'll come back to us and say, what did you mean by this? And how do they do this? Nonpartisan language, all the language we find is from existing sources. So if necessary, they change the language to be nonpartisan and aligned with our UU values. It's consistent, they assure links work, information is available to complete the tasks, and they too created guidelines. Sometimes, this happened recently, actions come up at the editing stage and something slipped through that the vetters didn't feel comfortable about. That's a new word we made up. I don't think it's a real word, vetters. We have added a new step in our workflow to revisit vetting before finalizing if an action comes up somewhere along the line after the vetting is done. And we recognize that this is an in-progress program, and we are very open to changing it. We're not married to how it works. Technology, and I'm so glad that Meg and Rob are here so they can answer more detailed questions. But right now, our church uses Realm and Google Docs to initiate this. Meg created a timetable and flow chart so that eventually when we're exhausted and are replaced, there's a documentation of how this work goes. If there needs to be changed, that will also be documented. We use Google Docs to share information and to archive everything we have done. Rob's created a database. I believe we now have, after 3 months, close to 120 participants. Our total church pledging membership is 240. So we're getting there really fast. Tech also created a system for emailing the folks that opted in. We are opt-in versus opt-out. I found that a very interesting comment from Evanston. So we'll talk about that, I'm sure. And then we have a plan for emergencies. Oh my gosh, this just happened, and we can't wait the week to get our email out. So we do have a plan for that. Because one of our tech folks, Rob, is on the policy governance committee, and this is part of our new goal as a church, is to move into a policy governance model. We are now creating a charter and covenant, so we kind of fell backwards into this program, and now we're making it official, and we will be creating a succession and leadership plan. So other considerations for technology, changes, modifications, updates. How big can we get? How large can the database get? Now that will be up to the tech people. We're going to assess and measure the success of what we're doing, and we're starting this tomorrow. Between our services, we have 2 services, adult RE or social hour, and in between. And we're going to have a table set up for our UU committee marketplace, and a few of us will be asking questions. How are you using these? How many actions do you get to a week? What do you like? Do you only want local or state or federal? So we're going to start to narrow down how we're going to do this based on what people tell us. And if they're not using it at all, that's a whole other story we'll have to address. Data analytics tracking is just beginning. We're going to start looking at the analytics and come up with a template for measuring our success. And we don't necessarily mean, did the legislation we were lobbying for pass, because we don't have full control over that, but how many people called their rep, for example. And again, we're using Google Docs to monitor that. The administrative process, the Justice in Action core members, we're 6 now, meet for 30 minutes weekly on Zoom just to check in. We take notes and we archive the notes so anyone who can't make it or is driving home from work or whatever can go and read the notes later. And we also use comments on Google Docs to talk to each other, or in a pinch, we might just text whoever it is that we need some immediate answers from. So we are in communication all the time with these 6 folks. As we grow, and we talked about this just on the car ride over, we'll probably expand this group, but there will be a core group that kind of administrates the process. And here's a picture. I know it's kind of small, but it's in your handout, what our Google files look like. And I won't read them all, but you can take a peek at all the different files we keep, including tutorials, which I thought was interesting for future people. And again, this is really hard to read on the slide, but in your handouts, you can look at our timeline and flow chart. It tells us who does what when, what do you do to pass it to the next team, and then eventually to the tech team who gets the email out. So we have to make sure, the vetting group has to make sure we're not putting actions up that will have already passed by the time the email goes, things like that. This is a sample intake form. So again, people opt in. I'll just give you an idea. It has a call to action, a brief background, a bigger background. There's a script if that's appropriate. This particular sample doesn't have one. It says, who do I contact? There's a link about who to contact, if it's a rally, where to sign up, what kind of action it is. So this one's an intergenerational rally. It might say phone call, it might say email or web form. And then it gives the person an estimated time, so they know how much time they're committing. Most of these actions are 5 to 10 minutes. So we're hoping that people do more than one a week. And not everyone's going to go to in-person things, and not everyone's going to do a phone call, but we're going to figure that out. Email blasts. This is what people get after they sign up. This is in 3 sections, but it does show all in one when you receive the email. It's got the 5 actions with the links. And then at the bottom, people can click the individual intake forms and then follow the intake form step by step and get the action done. Excuse me. We also have this information repeated on the website, and Meg did this. Rob does the email side of this. The same information is repeated on the website. Reverend Mandy also speaks about signing up for Justice in Action, talks about emails and the website from the pulpit, and we're constantly telling people to go to the website, talk to one of us to get on the list. And here's a little more detail about what the website looks at. I invite you to go to our website, DuPageUUchurch.org, and when you go to social justice, you'll find Justice in Action in the menu, and then you can click on those. And underneath here, it's not shown in the slides, but there's everything archived. So if someone wants to go back, because some of these issues are not one time, they are something we have to keep on, people can go back. Oh, I don't like these week's issues. I'm going to go back a week and look. Additional files, these are some of the things we keep in our additional files, just back office stuff, including tracking and time flow and web copy and tutorials. And we're creating a resource list that will eventually get on the website in a usable format for people to learn more about social justice, and eventually, hopefully, learn more about other ways to get involved in the broader community and with other organizations and churches. We have marketing materials we've given out. We often use the coffee hour time to do that. This runs in our newsletter. And again, we're reminding people, this is simple, low risk, low time commitment. We give you everything you need. We really want to make it easy for people to get involved. Upcoming developments, as we've discussed, questionnaire and social hour chats. We are going to email out a questionnaire to help narrow down and prioritize the actions. Right now, it's kind of our best guess, and we do try to mix it up with a variety of abilities and state, local, and federal, but we will be massaging that a bit. We do annual reports. We're working on a charter, covenant, list of resources, and updating guidelines as necessary. And we'll constantly reassess how this is working. We're 3 months old. I think we've done a tremendous amount of work in a short time, but it's going to develop and it will change and it will probably grow. And we're looking, and what you've all been waiting for, we're looking for point people to help amplify. So we suggest anyone here, if you like this idea, one point person in communications or social justice from your church, your organization, give us your email and name, and we'll add you to the list. And then we'd like you to take that list if you want to and share it out with your church. So we're not maintaining a database of 6,000 people. We'll have point people listed. If you're interested in collaborating more, want to talk more, I've listed, and these are in your handouts, Reverend Mandy's email and mine, and then if I can't answer something, I will forward it to one of the other members of our 6-person team. And I welcome questions and comments, and I also encourage you to join one of the collaboration breakouts, especially if you have technical questions. I won't be able to answer those, so join one with either Meg or Rob. Any questions, comments? Thank you.
Great, Holly, hold on a second.
I may have missed it, but what is the range of actions? I mean, is it anything, or have you narrowed it in any way?
Well, every week we try to find a local action. There's always a federal action. 5calls.org and Indivisible are 2 sources we go to weekly, and they tend to have federally based legislative and advocacy actions. So we always have 1 or 2 or sometimes more of those. If there are local issues we know about, we will add those because people want to work locally. And then we also use UUANI, but we try not to repeat what UUANI is doing because a lot of the people who are on this list are also on that list. But if there's something really urgent, like it's going to happen, the vote's happening the 2 days after the email goes out, we might repeat some of that. And again, we're also looking at different sources. So to answer your question, yes, local, state, and federal. We are having a discussion coming up about do we want to go into issues that are outside of the US specifically, because there's a lot going on in the world and we're interconnected. We do have to find a way to narrow things down. 1 week we had 11 actions. I'm really curious to know whether people actually did all 11 actions.
I did not. I'm on that list.
I don't have a question. I just want to add something. I think it's important to know that you don't have to be a member of our congregation to be a part of this email list. We have people from the community who've never stepped foot in the church before who are participating in this list, and I think that's really important to not only fight for different types of social justice, but also just to live our values. That you don't have to be one of us to fight.
Thank you, Meg. That's a really good point. I'm on Facebook a lot, and I belong to a lot of social justice groups. There's one in our area, this is where I get some of our local issues, that has, it's called Neighbor Gals. It's only women. But there are 1,000 active social activists on that list. And I post the website version or the email version of this every single week. So I'm an amplifier to those 1,000 people. And then they are also taking something that they like and amplifying it. I'll also amplify it on our coffee page to continue to get new people to come. And I'll tell anybody anything about it. Yes, so thank you for bringing that up. We do have local activists that don't belong to the church or don't do church or whatever that joined. And we welcome that.
Hold on, Paul.
Yeah, I have two questions, actually. One is, who are the deciders for the 5 to 7 actions each group? I wasn't clear on that.
Well,
and secondly, what's the demographics of your congregation?
So on the first question, who are the deciders? The two vetters, that would be myself and one other person, look over all the potential actions. We collect them all week and list them, and then we look over as to which ones we think are good. We also have members sending and emailing us things constantly. So the members are deciders. I would personally like to see that expand tremendously. It shouldn't just be two people making these choices. So I would prefer incoming as well as us going out and looking. But again, we're 3 months old, we'll get there. And then the second question, our demographics, you guys in the back help me out, but we're largely white, affluent. Naperville's an affluent white community. We do have a large LGBTQ portion of our church, a wide range of ages. The activists tend to look like me. They're older, they're female often, retirees. So the one-off idea largely comes from my experience with, if you want young people to do stuff, make it fast, quick, and easy, and that they can do on their own time. We have, how many kids do we have? Do you in the back know? Percentage-wise, maybe? Roughly 50 children and through high school. Okay, so
50?
yes, yes. We also have a young adult group. It's small. So does that answer your question? What more can I give you? We're from the Chicagoland area, concentrated around Naperville area. 240 pledging units. So that might be one person, or it could be two partners with children, or just two partners, or one retiree. So, yeah.
I just wondered, have you had activities that kids were involved in that you recommend?
I attend a lot of protests and rallies. That's kind of my thing. I make a lot of phone calls too. Kids do go to the rallies when appropriate, and thankfully where we live, it's a safe thing to do. In Chicago, I know for indivisible rallies, there are marshals and safety people and de-escalators and so forth. And I did attend with our minister and our minister's daughter. So I think it's happening as people can do it. It depends on time and what it is. Whoever's doing the poster library, that was you guys. Oh boy, that's a great way to get our kids involved in social justice right now. I'm gonna bring that one back right away.
Getting the impression, tell me if I'm wrong, that most of what Justice in Action is about voicing concern about legislative actions. Is that correct?
I would say focuses largely on legislative action. School just ended, but I myself in the past, before this program existed, would go to school board meetings or city council meetings when some heinous thing was going on. We have a hate group, unfortunately, or two in Naperville, and it often would involve things like attacking LGBTQ people. So that would be an example of a local action that could show up, but yes, I would say at this time it's largely legislative.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and then we're going to take a break.
Karen, thank you so much. I'm wondering, since you're probably deluged with opportunities every week, as a vetter, have you and your colleague who's also vetting established any criteria that you use to screen and select? And have you shared that criteria with members of the congregation who might also be flooding you with opportunities?
We're getting there. That's next up on our agenda. We're going to have a meeting about that. I personally, what I try to do is look at time-sensitive things, because some things are just ongoing, and some things they're taking a vote next Thursday on X, and our UU values say that X is wrong. So some of it's time-based, some of it's, is this hurting the people that we know in our community? and some of it's just a gut call. So we do need to establish parameters, and we're getting there. But that's a great question, and thank you for asking it. And
Thank you so much.
everybody.
Thank you. All right, we have a 5-minute break that we're 7 minutes late for already. So let's take 5 minutes still. I'm gaveling us in. All right. That's so nice. All right, so I'm going to look like there's enough time for me to spend a little bit of time talking about our reorganization dilemma or quandary at Countryside and what we did. And then Reverend Scott will come up and he'll be speaking about UANI directions, and then we'll take a lunch break. Actually, then we'll have some time for some questions still for the panelists. All right. So what I wanted to start with was the fact that the presentation that's in your book was not designed for this conference. It was designed to communicate to members of Countryside Church who all were interested parties, stakeholders in the direction of social justice or justice in general. I say justice in general because our environmental justice folks were concerned, even is maybe not an inappropriate word to use, of calling social justice, the social justice umbrella, social justice rather than just justice, right? Because environmental justice is not necessarily social justice. So we were in this quandary where our leaders of our social justice committee had decided that they wanted to pass on the baton, as I had mentioned earlier, to a next generation. And the next generation reached out their hand to grab the baton, or I should say the leader who was looking to retire had a baton and was looking to hand it, and there was nobody there, and the baton fell onto the ground and broke. And so we had a gathering of about 20 people in the January timeframe who are all interested parties to hear some of the ideas that those leaders who had been so committed, Yvette Johnson, Susan Auld, very committed, wonderful people, but enough's enough. I mean, he can only do this as the leader for so long. As anybody who's ever been on a UU committee and been a committee chair knows, it can be hard to escape that responsibility. So we had this discussion. There was nobody that raised their hand to be a leader, and I brought my wife to this meeting. Lisa, she's here. She was invited to the meeting. I hadn't even been invited. But I was there sitting around the table with everybody. And this woman, Yvette Johnson, who I mentioned, she kept looking at me every time, there was a thought about the handing of the baton. And I was not willing to accept the baton. I got a lot of other things going on. But she kept looking. And it was clear that what we needed was somebody to take some lead for a short period of time in the form of a task force to decide what is it that we're going to do now that the baton's broken on the ground. And there's 20 people in the room that all have interests in social justice, but none of them are interested to lead it. So that's the challenge that we're faced with in this communication. This tool is to talk about the results of what, after 8 weeks or so of Saturday morning meetings with a task group of people talking about, well, why are we here? What are we even doing? What is the purpose of justice at Countryside? What does it mean to us? So after talking for, and it's not an exaggeration to say, a few weeks probably of conversation, we decided that the congregation didn't have a structure that was agile enough to respond to the needs that congregation members had regarding anything having to do with social justice. And just as like an example, and all of you have faced this, in fact, every presentation has talked about narrowing. How do we narrow? How do we focus? So there's always somebody in the congregation, you know the person, they come and they say, wouldn't it be a great idea if we used the sanctuary to house these immigrants, or some other idea, but they weren't the person that was willing to carry the flag to the finish line to make it happen. They just had a great idea and they think, hey, social justice committee, or hey, board member, we should do this because we're UUs. And so then there would be ideas that never got off the ground. There was no ownership that would be felt by people for it. And so it led to frustration. People don't get involved then if they feel like their ideas aren't being responded to, even though, they'd never offered to take responsibility for carrying out that idea. So we, as a task team, started to engage different stakeholders. We started with the people that, we knew in the congregation. We had a listening session after service. We asked people questions about what they were doing actively in justice right now. What are they doing? And what do they want to do? What are their aspirations? And we didn't get that much input. We had, I was on the mailing list for North Shore, and I received information about the Democracy Action Team, and I thought, we should talk to them. Let's talk to another group that's ahead of us on this. And so we scheduled a meeting, which Sally and Holly and Janell graciously all got online with myself and Janet Oriati, who were the co-chairs for this task force, because even I didn't want to own the task force. Got to have a co-chair. So we consulted those things, and we also looked back in some of our documents, our congregational documents. So we have a policy manual and bylaws, things like that. And our policy manual had some definitions of something that we had created as a congregation called the Outreach Steering Committee. And it had some purposes of engaging with identifying some service partners that we would do fundraising for primarily. And that had been a very successful program, but in reality, the Outreach Steering Committee wasn't doing as much of that steering, but they were doing a lot in the fundraising department. And they were very good at it, and they really enjoyed it, and they were holding 2 different events each year. That money that was raised all went to partners. In fact, we just completed the last one a couple of weekends ago and raised around $35,000, for partners that we gave money to. So I mentioned the one of the needs in the community was this agility of the organization. So that's this speed to action. And in the conversation of talking about organizing justice effort, it came up that how crucial it is. There was a recognition, and so important that we decided this is something we need to really document and make sure every time we're thinking about actions that we're doing community building, that we are finding ways not just to do work, but to also celebrate together that work. So here at North Shore, I saw there's a bulletin board announcing the Mitzvah Day. And at the end of the Mitzvah Day, what do? They have a potluck gathering. It doesn't say it on the bulletin board, but I reached out to Dave Cohen, who I have immense respect for as an organizer of justice kind of work. And that was one of the elements, that I learned about with Mitzvah Days. And so that's part of what we think is important. And we also recognize that as a justice committee, we did not want to go and deviate from investments that the congregation was already making in certain partners. Like, let's leverage the partners and deepen the relationships rather than trying to find new ones. And the last recognition there, that we wanted to make it easy for congregants to be able to take action. So in the end, what we came up with as a set of recommendations was that we needed to have a leader still. We needed somebody grabbing a baton. And we recognized we needed to define what the roles of those leaders would be so that they could feel comfortable accepting the baton. And also the best practice that I could share with you is that the people that show up at meetings are the committed people. Those are the ones that are likely to grab a baton. So when I asked Wendy Whitcamp, who is here in this room, to be one of the Justice Matters co-chairs, as we now call it, she knew what that meant. She was part of the process, engaged in it. And the other co-chair, a gentleman named Bill Scown, he was the leader of our outreach steering committee that I've just mentioned earlier was really a partner fundraising group. We then tried to model a little bit after what UUSJ is advising about this idea of a democracy action team, but we did our own flavor of it. And so the premise is that we would create action teams, and we looked at, well, what are our alignments with our service partners? And they were around immigration, they were around LGBTQ, they were around community service, local community service, and there wasn't a group that was really focused on legislative action, and there wasn't a democracy action team at this time of this presentation when it got created. And I want to show you, it's a little bit hard to see, but it's in your materials as well. We basically have these co-chairs, and we have action teams that have action team leaders that are associated with each of them. And so there was somebody that volunteered, expressed interest to lead the team, and they are, to use lingo that's been shared here before, the vetters, so to speak. They're the ones who are helping to make decisions of what actions might be brought forward and get discussed with a social justice leadership team, or we call it the Justice Matters leadership team. We have partner liaisons because of the relationships we have with ICDI and the Chalice House, which is housing an immigrant family on our property. And we have a relationship with Partners for Our Communities that's serving our local Palatine area and wider area as well. A lot of immigrant population that is being served by them. And I'm missing one organization, Faith in Place, which has a strong alignment with our Green Sanctuary team that was already in place. So we forged an environmental action team, an immigration action team, and an LGBTQ action team. And while we were in the process of presenting this, somebody went and said, we need a democracy action team too. And so I'm gonna get to that. Should we have that is kind of the question. I'm gonna skip this and go to this slide. This is a slide that's trying to outline a basic process of if somebody has an idea that they want the congregation to get involved in. The individual brings that idea, and they could go directly to one of the action team leaders if it's associated with any of the action team kind of work, LGBTQ, immigration, so on. If there is no such action group, they can go to the justice chair people, and they can have a conversation. And here's what the justice chair people should be asking. Are the minimum criteria being met? Is this aligned with our UU values and congregational priorities? Is there an identified champion who's going to lead the effort and carry out that effort? And do we have the resources and passion that's there that would be required to achieve success? And if we get to that such a minimum set of criteria, then something could be compared and contrasted against other opportunities and decided, will that be something we adopt? And there was somebody who was willing to take ownership for a democracy action team. And they said they would be the leader of that team, and they had been acting as the leader of that team. Now, a team at Countryside has a life. All action teams have a life. They get born when there's passion and interest in a leader who's willing to lead the charge, and there's adequate progress and participation by the congregation. You know, if the energy's there, it lives. And when it's no longer relevant, or the passion goes away, or the resources are gone, or people move and there's nobody left, we don't try to sustain it on life support. We celebrate the work that it did, and I'm hoping to have some celebration of ending all of these teams would be great, right? Why are we doing this work? Because there's problems, right? If we could solve these problems, we wouldn't need to be here talking about these things. So that's the objective, right? Is to make these teams irrelevant. So anyway, that is really all I wanted to say about what we're doing at Countryside with regard to action teams and our Justice Matters program. That's what we call it. I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you. If anybody's got questions.
Would you want to just have people? I'd just like to get a little clarification. All this money you raised, which I think is quite amazing, so that you said you raised for partners in the community. Do you have a specific set of organizations that you support consistently, and what kind of relationships do you have them, and as you've been going through this process, is that changing? I mean, because one of the things that we have struggled to be able to do well is to find partners that we want to financially support, but it's been difficult to find organizations that we can have a meaningful interaction with, where we are doing something with them, and they, as opposed to just giving them money.
I so appreciate that question. So first, let me start with, there are 4 specific organizations that we have been partnered with for a long period of time. I don't remember, 3 years? Pardon? 3 organizations plus Chalice House, which is a big organization of multiple churches, multiple denominations. So ICDI, Partners for Our Communities, and Faith in Place are the long-standing, deep relationships that exist, and those are the places that money's been given. And to your related question, the struggle that we face is that we didn't want to just be giving money either. So, Reverend Karen Mooney, who is now affiliated with our church, she was active in this task force as well, and she also expressed some interesting ideas of looking for some of these organizations to perhaps provide education to our church communities to encourage engagement and to help understand some of maybe the nuanced issues that their communities that they're serving, that the partners are serving, face. So there's an educational element. We have at our congregation a number of people, and there's lots of opportunities for volunteering at Partners for Our Communities. There's a English learning lab, there's computer labs, there's a food pantry, there's collections that are taking place or will be taking place for them. That's one place that some of our members have been directly giving their time and talent. I don't know about Faith in Place. I think there's an eco ambassador that we have in our congregation who is a college student. And I don't know about other opportunities of driving deeper with that organization. But those are the ones I can speak to. Any other questions? All right, then we'll bring up, oh.
How is Chalice, can you tell us more about Chalice House, given the state of affairs in our country?
A little bit. So we have a Ukrainian family who is going through a legal process. So they're the people that go through and that are making use of the Chalice House resources all are done through partnership with ICDI. And ICDI, I believe, helps identify families that have a need for these kinds of resources, because otherwise some of these families might be held in a detention facility. Illinois Communities for Displaced Individuals, or something close to that. What's it say there? That's it. Displaced immigrants. Illinois, say it again. Illinois Communities for Displaced Immigrants. And so I guess I can say a lot more about Chalice House, but a lot of it's written. And can I maybe share with you some contact information? I can help you dig in deeper. There's a lot to it. I think that there's some risk that the family might even feel that's there now, given people that are even going through a legal process, that are here legally, that are in housing, they're being taken care of, by many, many caring people, and yet the government could decide they're going to deport them.
So you said someone has signed up and said they want to be head of a democracy action team. Do you assume that that's going to be a whole different set of things, or do you feel like some of the things you're doing now will fold into it?
What's really neat, I threw up a kind of an eye chart, difficult to, I'm sure, read, but what it's showing in the top black quadrant there is the leadership team, which is a couple of co-chairs plus the individual action team leaders from our immigration action team, LGBTQ plus action team, and environmental action team. And you can see there's another black rectangle that says partner liaisons, and that's where there are each of these partners that are represented, POC or Partners for Our Communities and so on. And there's names of people that are in that list. And you see this kind of rainbow colored band, which is trying to show communications or pathways for communications, because we have people that are liaisons to each of these individual partners that are also members of the action team, or in some cases, the liaison is the action team leader themselves. And the action team leaders have been meeting with the Justice Matters Committee so that we have regular communication that's been taking place. It was almost on a weekly basis, to my freedom disappointment, because I've been participating in those as well. But we are trying to be more integrated, where there is an opportunity that looks like it's a legislative opportunity that the immigration action team's aware of. They would bring that to the attention of the democracy action team. Oh, but conveniently, the immigration action team leader is the democracy action team leader. So they're already aware and trying to find ways of integrating. Does that, am I answering the question you were asking?
Clearly, it's all in process. So I guess what I'm sort of curious about is that when we put together this democracy action team, it was very clear that this was all new business. This was really related to what was happening both in our community and sort of larger, as a result of, what has changed in terms of legislation in Washington, D.C. And I'm curious as to whether or not that's how your Democracy Action Team envisions their work.
I think so. And I think the reason it ended up getting, first off, the reason it wasn't on the list to begin with was because we had no partners, nobody already that's a leader volunteering and driving the action. So we were following our rules. It doesn't exist if there isn't the resources to make it happen, even though it's relevant, because you're doing it. And we could, in fact, join your mailing list and we could follow up on your actions. Look, I did. So I amplified your actions and told people in our congregation about Reverend Lucas going to the Deerfield board meeting. So there were people from Countryside that showed up to that event. That's probably why. Well, and the reason CAUUC exists is to try to create opportunities for these leverages. Why reinvent the wheel? You're doing a great job with doing all the scouting. I take what you do, I take what Karen Peck's group does, and I share it with my team, and I say, before you go spend a lot of time figuring out words and language, how about take a look at this Google form that's already been filled out, and it has a whole bunch of really useful information. It's not our representatives, it's their representatives from Naperville. But guess what? Here's a link, and here's our representatives, and we'll just cut and paste, and it's in our weekly newsletter. Off to the races. So, in fact, this kind of conversation about this is a conversation I've been having with Scott forever, because CAUUC is about this, trying to get collaboration between churches, and UUANI is having some success with at least being in a bunch of churches, not necessarily as much collaboration as I'm envisioning, and that's why Scott's, I think, going to help us to maybe have some future vision, of what we might do. I'm hoping, before he retires. Any other comments, questions before we bring Scott on? Let's bring Scott then. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. No, it's good. How much time do I have at this point? I like this. Take 15. Really? I'll see what I can do. Yeah, okay. First, again, I'm Scott Aaseng, head of the Unitarian Universalist Advocacy Network of Illinois. There's a lot of pronunciations. The one I like is you, and I, because it's about you and I working together, and we're trying to be a collaborative network of congregations. More and more, that's the vision that we're leaning into. Is UUNI isn't a separate thing outside of congregations. It never has been. It's the space for collaboration of doing our work together. We want to get better at making that real, and so this conference is actually a good kickstart in that direction. I'm impressed by what I've heard today. It's like, this is great stuff. I love the similarities amongst the different things, as well as the different unique, distinct pieces. Part of me wants to think that's because we're in conversation with each other. Like, I know most of what's happening in congregations, but there's a lot of things I didn't know before today. For example, even UUSJ's Democracy in Action teams, like, well, you and I was promoting that about the same time, and we came up with that independently. So it's like, great minds think alike. And I think that's the moment we're in among these congregations. Like, we're all trying to do the same kind of thing, aren't we? And so I think to Mike's point, let's see if we can do it together and not reinvent the wheel all over the place. In terms of meeting this moment, which was kind of the focus, right, for the conference, it's an extreme version of what I think is always the moment, which is that we are always looking to make a difference, but that's never been more pressing than now. It's like, we need to do something that makes a difference. And I'll kind of press on that. It's like, it's more than just doing something. we have a need to make a difference, so that our efforts aren't just an exercise in futility or beating our head against a wall. And that, to me, that means being really strategic and being collective. It's like not doing it on our own and not just doing whatever, but having some kind of sense of how we're being strategic about this. The criteria that UUNI has used from the start is something that came from the UUA decades ago. It's called the GAFL model, which is the basis for our GRACE model. Is it grounded both in our UU values and in the collective passions and interests of our peoples? And that's where to find the place of focus, I would argue, is if we can find the commonalities amongst our people, that they might be all over the place, but if we can sift together what are the main points that people really care about that revolve around their values, that would be the G of the GAFL model. Are we accountable to those who are impacted by what we're trying to do? Ideally, that's not just a transactional, this is what you sent out in your email, so we're going to amplify it. I think that's worth doing, but it ultimately is a transformative relationship. We're actually knowing the people that we're partnering with and who are impacted, and that we are working in collaboration, in allyship, in co-conspiracy with them. The F is for fit. I've always translated that as, does it make sense for us to do this? Does it fit our capacity, and can it grow our capacity to do this more in the future? And that's a good question to kind of always ask, like assess what really is our capacity? What are our congregations built to do? And then the last thing is the O for opportunity. What is the opportunity to actually make a difference in the world? There's any number of things we can do. We really look for those places where there's something that's timely, and we might have some chance of actually making an impact on that amongst all the things we could possibly throw our efforts towards. We try to focus on things that are grounded in our values and our interests, that are accountable to those who are impacted, that fit who we are and build our capacity, and where there's an opportunity to actually move the needle on some things. So let me try to condense some of what I was going to say. UUNI isn't just about getting people to do stuff. It's about building power to do things together in solidarity with impacted communities and organizations. And again, I do that not to disparage the thing of like, we need to be doing things, no question, let's do stuff. But we're really trying to do the strategic thing of building power, which means doing it together, doing it collectively, not just individuals doing stuff. Though that's a good on-ramp to getting people into the pipeline, right? And so our actions of the week are a key example of like, that's just a one-off thing you can do whenever. And that's a good starting point. But how do we do things more collectively? And how do we build the capacity to do things together over the long haul, to keep on doing these things and building more power and energy and capacity to do more in the future? I would argue that's kind of a distinctive piece of what UNI is trying to promote among congregations, is building collective power with a network of individuals and teams and congregations across the state, and to keep doing them in ways that are ever more impactful. Like I said, it may start with doing one-off actions like our actions of the week, our weekly actions alerts, but our goal is really to connect with each other for powerful action together. Let me go back to the thing about meeting the moment. Part of what we're looking for is a way to make a difference. I think we're also looking for ways to connect in our ever more fragmented society, right? At the national level, at the individual level, you just need to look at how often we're looking at our phones to see how we're disconnected we can be becoming in some ways. How do we build the real human connections that really are the lifeblood of not just our social action, but of our lives? And so that's why we use technology, but don't want to center our efforts on a technical solution, but really on a relational basis for what we're doing. We're really trying to build relationships in congregations, with partner organizations, with impacted communities, so we are building the beloved community that is really at the heart of our faith. You know, we're not just a political organization trying to do the right thing. We actually have a bigger vision than that. We're trying to create a new society. We have a vision of a world that's connected in an interdependent web. How do we make that real? So, what does this look like? That's kind of the big up here kind of stuff, right? The big picture stuff. At the congregational level, which is where almost all of social action is going to happen in Illinois or in any place. To me, it's more and more looking like having a team of people at the congregation level that is focused on engaging the whole congregation. And that's what I've heard today, is like these are teams that aren't, it's not just an immigration team or an equal justice team. It's a team that's focused on whether you call it democracy in action or a catalyst team. There's different language and formats for it, but having some group that's focused on how do we engage our congregation in living our values? How do we engage not just the silos and just the individuals, but how do we engage ourselves as a community, as a whole community? Because as a community together, we have power. And how do we do that intentionally and not just trying to plug people into things? So besides the things I've heard today, again, the democracy team here, the catalyst team in Evanston, the justice at DuPage. Unity Temple isn't here today, so I'll speak for them, and they're the congregation I've worked most closely with in a lot of years, for a lot of years. They have a catalyst team. Nancy Ford leads their catalyst team, but it's not just her, it's a number of people. It's a team that works with membership to engage with new members coming in, so it works very directly with them. It works with their RE program to engage with families, with children. How can they be engaged in social justice and vice versa? And Mike asked for stories and gems, and I love the story of Casey Hall, who is part of the Catalyst team at Unity Temple. He's not even a member yet, I don't think, or maybe he just joined, but he came in looking for a place to do social justice and a place to sing. It was easy to figure out how to sing, he just joined the choir. It wasn't quite as easy to figure out how do I get into the social justice work, right? The avenue wasn't quite built for that. So he started asking at the choir, well, how do we do social justice there? And nobody had an answer. Like the choir wasn't plugged into social justice. There were two camps in the congregation. And I've actually seen that in congregational meetings, not to get into that, but there's different emphasis, right, in the choir and the emphasis in social justice work. Well, the Catalyst team said, let's see if we can't bring these two together. And so Casey came back to the choir and said, hey, I've gotten connected to this Catalyst team and they'd like to engage all of us in living our values. How can we do that? And people were so interested. It's like, well, of course we're interested. We just didn't know what's happening. We didn't have the communication networks or whatever it was to know what's happening. And so most of the choir now is like plugged into something in social justice because Casey said, hey, this is here. It's not just for those people, the activists who have their issue. It's for everybody, right? And it's just a beautiful story, I think. And it also revolves around, the reason Casey got involved is because Nancy sat down with him as a newcomer to the congregation and said, hey, what are you interested in? Casey said, I'm interested in social justice. Well, what does that look like? And they had a conversation. That's what their Catalyst team looks like. And I think that's what Evanston does too, right, Carolyn? It can involve surveys, but it very much relies on that personal, relational, conversational connections. Like I'm building a relationship with somebody, not just to extract information, but to build a connection with somebody who I'm going to be connected with for the long haul. That's the kind of deep connections we're trying to build in our congregations, because I think that's the basis for being really powerful as communities and powerful in our communities by building those deeper connections. At Second Unitarian, they have a catalyst, Ryland Rich, who'll be going to third pretty soon. She started a social justice table after worship on Sunday mornings. And a lot of us have those, but it wasn't just an information table. In fact, it wasn't primarily an information table. It's a conversation table, a place to come and say, hey, you interested? Let's sit down, literally, let's sit down, not just stand across the table and talk over leaflets. Let's sit down and have a conversation. And it's become a gathering space for all the people at 2U who are very interested in social justice and are all over the map with that. They're starting to have conversations to weave their collective power together because they're talking to each other. Hey, how could we do this together? How can we engage more people? How can we work together to really live out our values in a powerful way? And it's focusing not just on those issues, and I think that's a common thread today. It's like we're not just focused on let's just do climate change or let's just do whatever it is. Democracy is a pretty good umbrella for all the issues in a lot of ways. I think that's why the You the Vote work really has taken off, because it's something that we all care about, something that falls under the democratic process, right? The democratic umbrella. I don't know if you know, but like a quarter of the UUs in the state volunteered with You the Vote last year. I mean, 900 people out of 4,000 some people UUs in the state. A lot of people engaged in You the Vote because it wasn't that pigeonholed, siloed thing about this is your issue. It's like we care about our public life together and we're organizing around our values, not around a specific political agenda. And I think there's a difference. There's obviously connections, but I think there's a difference. So one thing is having a group of people that's focused on engaging the congregation, building that relational power, building the connections. The other thing we heard today is like, how do you focus this? It can't always be everything everywhere all at once. I think that sometimes works, but it sometimes backfires in my experience. And so what seems to have worked in a lot of congregations is dedicating certain times for certain actions. And it could just be like the week, like Justice DuPage. These are the 7 things you can do this week. You and I, this is the one thing you can do this week. I think Evanston and for sure Unity Temple have a monthly focus. It's like this month we are focusing on eco-justice, or this month we're focusing on prison ministry. And it isn't that the other groups have to sit silent and be dormant for those months. They can still do their things, but the institutional focus of the congregation in terms of what's in worship and the preaching and what gets highlighted in communications, and the offerings, they're all coordinated together to focus on this is what we collectively are doing as a congregation this month. Carbondale does it on a yearly basis, and they've had a phenomenal success to get over half of their congregation doing something around their yearly focus every year. It's like, the numbers are astounding to me. And what else? I think that's probably all I need to say. There's stuff I could talk about what we do statewide. And I'd like to get into the collaboration piece, maybe during the breakout, but let me stop there and just ask if there's some questions. And I was going faster, I know.
I saw Karen first, hold on.
When do these conversations happen? Typically on a Sunday or some other way?
Yeah, they usually start on a Sunday because the very best way to connect with people is like face-to-face, right? And so you'll kind of, hey, you know, it's often a heads up, hey, would you like to get together and let's have coffee sometime? It can be a phone conversation or a Zoom conversation. It can happen right after church on Sunday. It can happen a lot of different ways. Like I said, or it could be around a table after service. Yeah, there's no set way for it to happen. But it's hard to fit all of them in after church. And so, yeah, you need to have people who have some time and space to talk, to get together on a Saturday morning or something, whatever it might be, yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm sorry I came a little bit late. Is this on? Okay. Pardon my ignorance, but is Unity Temple where you go to, you're from Unity Temple?
So I'm with the statewide UU network.
Okay.
Working with all congregations around the state. I'm technically their community minister, so they're kind of my base congregation, home-based congregation. But yeah.
Okay, so I get your organization's emails, and then Unity
Yeah.
Temple is in Oak Park.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I tried to follow them on social, but I couldn't see anything up to date. So that was my first question. Thank you for clarifying. Second, is there truly only about 4,000 UUs in the state of Illinois? Is that
4,500, I think, is around
like
the number.
adults only? Or how are you tracking that?
That's the numbers
Or how
reported.
is it tracked?
Yeah, it's the numbers reported to UUA congregation. People would know better how those things are happening. I just look at what I see on the website, so yeah.
Wow,
It's
that
actually-
seems so small to me.
It does.
Okay.
We actually lost 2 congregations. They fell off the list, so we're down to 35 congregations.
Well, I'm sort of new to UUism, and I think it's really a cool organization. It's like religion, but not that religious. And I really like it. I really like it. I really like it. I think we should try and grow.
Amen, amen, yeah.
All right. I'm working on it. I have a big mouth.
No, that's great. And part of what we're seeing is like a big chunk, not a big, but a significant chunk of people who are signing up for our action alerts, like you're finding at other places, aren't UUs, or at least they aren't connected to a congregation. So our work isn't just for us, right? I think it's around our values, and that's what I want to lean into. This is working around our values, not around being UU.
Yeah, that's how I started, actually. I started with work for justice.
Yeah.
I came to this church for an action item.
Yeah.
And then stayed for the other stuff.
Yeah.
And then I watch all the churchy things online, and I come to in person for the fun stuff, the justice work after. But I'm down for I like the idea.
I love it. I love it.
I'm here for it. All right. Love y'all. Thank you so much. Thank you.
First Don, then I'll come back to you, Carolyn.
I'm Don from Hobart, Indiana. Just a very quick comment on the statistics. It's, I think, probably due to the individual nature of people who find Unitarian Universalism that when they've measured their Unitarian Universalism of all the organized faiths in the United States is the leader in the number of people who self-identify as Unitarian Universalist without being a member of a congregation. In other words, there's lots of us out there, so don't be too put off by the formal numbers.
I would just echo what you just shared with us. My husband's one of those secret UUs who is a Unitarian Universalist. He just won't declare it exactly, but if you lay out everything that we have and bring him to church on Sunday mornings, he loves it. So at any rate, so my question for you, Reverend Scott, is given what we've heard about how challenging it is for each of our congregations to get our folks to narrow in and focus, aside from UU the Vote last year, which was incredibly successful, as you just shared, we were all in it. We just were all hanging out together and sending our postcards and going up to Michigan and Wisconsin. Aside from that, where it's evident that we're all connected on it, to what extent is it possible for our congregations to hook up with each other on any one thing and move together, having that power that you referred to? I mean, I love the fact that Mike actually reached out to these folks to get info and get hooked in. But other than those kind of random self-selected connections, how would we ever get UU congregations to all move together on one thing?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's the one thing, though it might be at a particular time. I think the democracy umbrella might be a good way to kind of come together, and under that umbrella, we might have different emphasis at different times, kind of like that, focus over time. We're not going to have the one thing that we're all doing for all the time, but we might have one thing we're doing at one time and another at another time. But I do think there's space for a democracy collaboration. Would that be a name for what we want to get going? And I'd love this to be the start of that kind of process. It dovetails very well with UNI's own strategic planning process, which just is underway, to think about how do we really distill down in this particular moment, because the moment has changed. We all recognize that externally with what's happening at the federal level, but also for UNI, because I'm leaving and there's new leadership coming in. A lot of things are changing. So to create a space where we can come together and share the different things that we're trying out with each other, share them with each other, and maybe do a little less recreating the wheel. But I love the creativity, so let's bring all the wheels, right? And we'll have a really snazzy bus with a lot of wheels. I think it's great. Yeah, I would love to talk more about that at the breakout collaboration, the collaboration breakout. I guess that's what we're talking after lunch, right? Yeah.
Well, while I'm walking to her, Scott, are there other action networks in the country that you all have some other resources that you share and collaborate?
So there's roughly 25 UU state action networks like UU and I. We work with UUSJ. There's the DC focused action network for UUs. So we're partnering with them. And then there's a network of those state action networks. Is that what you're asking? Yes. Yeah. I frankly think it's time to be thinking beyond the UU box too. It's like we need to be building in our local communities. Are we working with the UUs and the Baha'i and the Muslims and the Jews? And I think there's a lot of space for more interfaith and cross-organizational collaboration, and not get into a UU silo. As much as we're working on breaking down the silos in our congregations, we dare not build a UU silo. So yeah.
This is contrary to what you just said, but yeah, a lot of us are doing the same protests and marches, and that's visible. And how can we show up under a UU banner? Not our specific church, but that's power in collaboration, right?
Sure, yeah, no problem with being UU and showing up as UU. I think the Side with Love banner is the most commonly recognized symbol of UU social justice work that we have. The yellow shirts, the heart logo, that kind of stuff. Yeah, by all means, I would show up as UUs where that's appropriate. The caveat would be in places where we're in an organization space, it's like, no, we're showing up as ICER. Well, I'm not gonna show up when my United t-shirt when everybody else has an ICER t-shirt on. It's like, no, I'm gonna respect whose action this is. But if it's a collaborative action, yeah, of course, let's show up as UUs. Let's fly our flag. There's just one teaser for the collaboration piece. What we're exploring, we can talk about more after lunch, is how might we project power that we're building across the state and across state lines? Because as Evanston knows, Carolyn knows, in Evanston, it's one thing to talk to your legislators, but they're all on board with over everything we're talking about. In other places around the state, their legislators are on board with absolutely nothing that we're on board with. Can we project some of that power from Evanston down into Quincy or over into Wisconsin? I mean, I think we did that with UU the Vote fairly successfully in a lot of ways. Are there other ways we can project our power from our power bases into places that could use some more resources and build those cross-geographically collaborations? Is there a question back there?
I was curious whether you have any, I'll say, documented guidance around things that are on the brink of being partisan. So, for example, the June 14th parade, and there's, I think, a response of a No King rally on June 14th. Mm-hmm. And so I have been struggling with what's the criteria we should use? Like, when do we take our church banner or ourselves, you know, where maybe we wear a UU t-shirt, but do we take the church banner to the No King parade? You know, and, I don't know, anyway.
Yeah, so obviously you can show up as a UU in any space you want to. As a congregation, you cannot show up in spaces that are specifically dedicated to a specific party or a specific candidate. That would be the hard red line. We cannot be in spaces that are dedicated to promoting a party or a candidate, or for that matter, opposing a party or a candidate. So that's the pretty bright red line. That doesn't mean we can't work with parties and potentially even candidates who are working for our values. And so No King would be a democratic value that we have shared, as been in part of our core principles for decades. There's absolutely no problem with showing up for something like that that's dedicated to democracy or against a king or someone who's acting like a king. I mean, can we show up in spaces that are against our president? Yeah, of course, you can always show up in spaces against our president, as long as he's not running for office in that particular time frame. Yeah.
He's always running.
And that's also true, and he may never step down. And I think the 6 months is kind of the rule. 6 months before election is like, you really got to stop. You really can't do anything talking about specific candidates 6 months before. It's fuzzy. They rarely prosecute that kind of stuff, but that could change. So,
any last questions before? Okay. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll break until 12:45. Okay, we had 3 groups. Who? Let's start with the engaging families. I'm kind of curious about them. I know. Yeah. Who will be speaking? Well, please come on up, and you can come up to the rock. Come on up to the rock. And if you could focus the camera maybe on the rock. The rock.
All right. We ready to start now? Or are there more people coming? Are there more people coming, or we just go for it? Okay. So we went through our 6 questions. So I'll just do those and then summarize our answers, because there are. That needs to be turned down. Oh, better? Okay. So the first one was, how has your congregation involved children, youth, families, or older adults in justice work, and has it worked well? We really came up with a lot, but summing it down, it was service projects for all ages, mostly driven by RE, but a lot of our young adults and teenagers were self-driven, shall we say. And reaching out to kids in the community, so not just our kids, UU kids, but kids in the community to get them involved. Let's see, that was that summary. The next one was, what obstacles have you encountered trying to get all ages and all abilities? So competition for the kids' attention, that was summed up by soccer, and all of the other things that kids of all ages are doing nowadays. Mobility issues ranging from just getting out of the house to get to church and get to the things, to once you're there, can you stand for an hour? And that just doesn't apply to age, that applies to all abilities. And then safety issues. Is this thing safe for this person? And this thing could be a rally, this thing could be anything. And then the age-old difference between tech issues between the generations. Some people are more tech savvy, some people aren't. Next one was, how do you connect justice work with faith formation or religious education? Service projects. And we come back to this a lot on ours, but showing the youth what we do by doing it. So that was a lot of it was show, don't tell, I guess is a good way of saying it. And connecting our faith, the new Article 2, to our actions. So justice to this action, we show how that works together. And then showing empathy, to teach empathy. And community-driven, meaning the UU community that they're with. Next one was, what does accessibility look like in your justice efforts? Actually, we came up with ideas of how to put that into action. One would be an accessibility support network. So that would be, one idea was having a fleet of mobility aids, scooters or whatever, for people who can't go to the rally or can't, stand the whole time. Vary the activity requirements so they meet any member. One thing like in Justice in Action we're trying to do is make sure that anybody can do one of these 5, and it's not going to be simple, but try, I guess. Make sure there's space for those who are not in the right mind space to act. So if you have somebody grieving, they're not going to probably want to march, or maybe they do. But if they don't want to, no judgment. It should be, we need to have that same compassion for ourselves and others that we're trying to give when our social justice actions. All right. What partnerships or examples have helped you make your efforts more inclusive? So we have the Compassion for Campers, Willow Creek, that was one concrete example, NAMI. And then we actually got into other churches and other faiths and other congregations as good examples. We talked about how the Catholic Church runs hospitals, things like that. We need to or should reach out and look at how these other faiths are doing things. And then one thing we identified as a problem, all of that, is sometimes we identify the solution before the problem. We love to march, but if you're hungry, that's not gonna solve the problem. So that's another thing is, let's have that person tell us, or that group tell us what their problem is, and then collaboratively figure out a solution. And some of the things that we would do, where we'd like to try, are partner with other socially active groups, so other churches. So same thing you and I want to do, but expand it. So other churches, the Quakers were brought up. So not just UU. Skill-based training that then leads to actions. So the example is, I guess the best way to put it is, if you have kids out helping you, they're usually just lift and shift. They just move stuff. Let's give them the skills, teach them the skills. You could have other people teach them the skills to actually then do real actions. Lifting is important, yes, but let's give them the tools to move forward. And the last one, and I really like this one, is neurodiversity intersection. We're not all the same. We don't all think the same. And I don't think anybody does it, really, yet. So that was it. And that was actually long, but this whole page was what we did.
They followed the rules. They actually answered the questions. Thank you. Let's bring up group 2, involved with the direct action. Who is this person who took notes is going to speak for you? Okay.
Okay, so we had a nice conversation over lunch, and the first question was, what are the most effective direct actions and advocacy campaigns your congregation has been involved in recently? Of course, we had the wonderful example that UCE shared about the Justice Initiative, their Catalyst Forum, and the increased communications efforts. Hinsdale has been involved with a number of I would say, more traditional social justice actions. Black Lives Matter, we did a big fundraiser for Green Sanctuary in terms of enhancing or reducing our carbon footprint, active with PADS, homeless initiatives. Tree of Life has been very involved with homeless initiatives in McHenry County for years. So those are a few of the things that we've been very involved with. Also, Democracy in Action. We were very active. Hinsdale was very active in terms of working up in Wisconsin prior to the election. Challenges that we faced in organizing and sustaining participation, and what have we done to address them? We talked about just getting people and resources, financial resources, has always been a challenge. Some things that we talked about were, direct outreach, phone calls, communications, just asking people to be involved. Mike, you had your presentation focused on defining roles in a way that's manageable, making sure there's buy-in and support for the initiative. I mean, those I think was helpful in terms of thinking about those, how to address those kinds of challenges. How do you decide when and where to show up as a faith community, and what guides do you use for that determination? I thought Scott's the GAFO, that seemed like a really good principle that was grounded in our values, accountable to the communities that we're trying to serve, fit within our resources and capabilities, and then, of course, an opportunity to make a contribution to improving things. That seems like a great way of sort of summarizing some very good principles for making those judgments. And then, of course, couldn't help but reflect on the advice from our presenters about focusing efforts to a reasonable list of priorities to address your efforts. How do you build leadership for justice beyond a small core group? We talked about actionable items, kind of the quick takeaways, the database and the communication tools that we discussed in the morning. Those seem like a very good approaches. How might congregations support each other in showing up for action and advocacy? The presentation that we had, I thought were, just the fact that we were all together and shared what we're each doing. It looks like there's going to be lots of opportunities for collaboration. I thought, Mike, you set a great example with your efforts to partner with DuPage Unity and what they're doing. And I'm kind of inspired by that example. It seems like that would be a great thing for us to try to work on and look at ways we can work across congregations. Anybody else? So, thanks.
Group one. Good luck.
All right, there had to be a group that didn't read any of the questions, and that was us. Dang it. So we opened with what could it look like to collaborate locally to multiply justice efforts. So that was our question. We talked about building on activities that are working for individual organizations, and then we discussed whether that would be by issue or would that be by action. And that led us into the intersection between conversations that are issues specific and about the democratic process, and which of those would overlap more across churches. So it really became a conversation about the value of process sharing or the value of content sharing, and how context specific some of our actions are, that they're not transferable across churches or across regions. So that led us to the possibility of a quarterly meeting for process sharing conversations and the discoveries that we've made in our own churches about processes that work. But then Sally asked, how does it amplify the power we have if it's just about sharing a process? So we played around with the idea that, for example, we're not focusing on women's rights, but if we went to a group where we could receive information from another church that's really passionate about that, and then we could share it with our people, and those in our congregation who wanted to engage could engage, because we found an accessible place to get that information. But the underlying question really became, how do we share immediate actions, and what kind of technology makes that manageable? And how facile are we all in these different kinds of technology across churches? So we are unique, we value context, but then it was, well, where do we overlap? So is it the overlap that would be the reason for us to come together? And Scott shared with us about phone banks that are being done around the issue of Medicaid into red areas, but you're calling a like-minded person, asking them to call their rep. So it's a fairly accessible and easy way to phone bank if that's kind of not your thing. So that was kind of the closing conversation. And then Scott reminded us that the Action Council Network is running, and offered us an invitation to join in that conversation to continue this conversation. So that was us.
So I appreciate everything that's gone into having today take place. It's been a rich sharing, and thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking the time on the last of the beautiful part of the day. It's going to get cold, I was told on the way in. So, are there any questions or parting thoughts that anybody wants to share, which we can use the microphone to capture any of those before we break for the day?
I just want to thank you so much, Mike, for everything that you've put into making this happen today.
I was going to say the same thing.
You're welcome.
Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't going to ask a wrap-up question. I feel that many of the actions that we take are very local to our county. And I am not sure if other people are like that as well, that it's, you know, when it's very local, it's just, so what I feel is that those actions that take place in our county, I don't know that we can get people from other counties wanting to put time and effort into our very local issues. It's just a question of, I don't know how that works.
The transgender youth that was at the high school in Deerfield had people attending from Lake County, Cook County, I don't know what range of counties, but it wasn't just people from this congregation. I'm sorry, five UU congregations had participation.
Were they helpful to the DuPage County or whatever county it was?
That was in...
It was Lake County? So it was other people from other counties were there to support Lake County, is what you're saying? Yes. Oh, okay, got it.
Other people were there to support a transgender youth and their rights, not a county. They happen to be from counties. You know what I mean? I didn't amplify it thinking and worrying about what county it was even in. If people were interested to participate, I let them self-decide by amplifying, by passing on the message to others.
I think also, just to add, the work that we're doing here is multiplied in other places, right? And it spreads throughout. And when people see us doing that online, they see, oh, I can do that in my town too. And, you know, all of it is, if we give examples of, hey, this is how it can look like, it transforms itself, especially online, when you see it happening online. Whenever you're doing something, if you're safe and comfortable sharing it, do share it, because other people see it and other people get, you know, activated as well.
Please use a microphone so we could record it.
I mean, one thing that occurred to me as we were chatting about what's going on in McHenry County is there are some challenges that you face that, like I live in Cook County and Cook and DuPage sort of, there are things that we just don't, opposition or issues, challenges, we just don't have that, frankly, maybe we should be aware of that you're facing in McHenry, that maybe we should be supporting and responding. Maybe it's an opportunity for us to be, you know, to show our values and, you know, help support the efforts that you're having out in McHenry. So that's, I guess that was sort of my reaction as you described, well, it's just a county issue. Well, it's maybe an issue that perhaps folks from other counties ought to lean into.
Great input. Any other parting thoughts? Words of wisdom?
I have no wisdom. I just want to share that I love y'all. That is wise. I have no parting wisdom to say except that I truly appreciate you and love you. It makes me feel like fuzzy and warm. And most of the time in the last few months, I've felt like cold on the inside, because I'm so scared for myself and my loved ones. And then I vacillate into like hot and sweaty and ready to burn everything down. But not really, because I'm nonviolent and I'm not an arsonist. But I'm genuinely very grateful in this space to feel connected with people from so many different spaces, yet unified. by our core values as UUs. Yeah, I just feel really, really appreciative. And I'm so glad that I came in person because it's way better in person than online. Yeah, thank you. Love you.
Couldn't agree more.
Amen and blessed be.
All right, well, it's a conference. Thank you all.
Huzzah!